Hey, super friends. Going live just for like a 30-minute AMA. I wanted to first apologize that we haven't put any content out over the last few weeks. To tell you the truth, we have recorded a few episodes. We just haven't really had time to release them. John, the Superflex dude, has just been traveling and like really, really busy. And so like I'm not even sure if those episodes are going to release, but I wanted to give you, the Discord members, I don't know, a little bit of content. We're still here. We're still digging into the theory and all the questions that you have. And I'm working through all kinds of, the same stuff that you are. My rookie drafts are going on. I'm doing my first waiver runs, trying to sharpshoot some of the names to apply them to the strategies. And so I figured let's just open the floor up to you. If you want to join, you are certainly welcome to put questions in the Discord, or we can put you live on stage with me. We can have a discussion. We can talk about questions. Let's talk about anything. It doesn't even have to just be football. But I'm going to be around for the next 30 or so minutes. I mean, longer if we have a whole bunch of questions come through, and they are already coming in the Discord. Let's start with Jay's question. Hypothetically, how would you deal with a league member who's intentionally not trading? Definitely not talking about Jake Abrams right now. I want to ask you, the super friends, do you intentionally not trade for periods of time? And if so, why? Because I'm fascinated by that part. If it's like an abstinence thing or like cutting back from alcohol in January, having like a dry trading month, and what that does for your appetite in terms of like sending out trades, in terms of having the mental fortitude to not engage in trade offers, in terms of like not countering, not accepting. Do these trades just sit out there, Jake? Why are you doing this, man? Or is this just like, I'm not sending out offers, but I'm going to respond to them? And it's really not a bad time of year to do that a little bit, to settle down and just say like, all right, I've done my rookie drafts. I've done waivers. You almost need to take a breath, not for yourself necessarily. I mean, maybe you do, but to see where your team is and to feel the landscape, to understand like, okay, now all of my league mates have these other assets. Now there's no longer a 2025 rookie pick. That doesn't exist anymore. There's names associated with all these assets. And so there's a lack of fluidity. And when there is a lack of fluidity, I think it makes a lot of sense to maybe like not trade as frequently. Is that the path that I take? No. I kind of want to exploit the biases, the new biases that are emerging. And so, Jake, I'm here for you, buddy. If you need help with trading, I don't think you do. If there's anything you're going through that's preventing you from trading, if you need a co-manager, I'm here for you in the interim. Jay, I don't know how to deal with a manager like this, to be honest with you. Maybe just keep hitting them with offers and see if you can break them. Maybe ask them if they have a deadline in mind and they're saying like, all right, I'll trade June 1st or whatever. And then be ready to pounce then, because that sounds like a lot of fun to re-engage with a trade partner that's been inaccessible for a while. The aforementioned Jake is here. He's at work right now, apparently. Not working too hard, I hope. How do I use parenting skills in fantasy football? And how do I use fantasy football skills in parenting? God, what a great question. Let's see. I have put managers in timeout before. Maybe that's what Jake is doing to you, Jay, is putting you in timeout. If you're an a-hole, if you're a jerk, if you say you're going to accept a trade offer, let's say, and we send it over, and lo and behold, you don't accept it, you're in timeout. And that feels a lot like my toddler, where it's like sometimes you just have to reinforce gentle consequences, escalating consequences, of course, in terms of impact. But yeah, sometimes you have to treat other managers like a toddler, because it's the Wild West, right? And these people think that they can get away with anything. AJ, oh, he's got an experiment going on. I'm actually going to be joining Jake, I think, today, at the Dynasty Underdog podcast. They've got a bunch of really great questions, so I'm looking forward to that. How do I apply fantasy football to parenting? I apply a portfolio approach. I just have a lot of kids, and there's times when each one is my favorite. No, I'm kidding. I try not to let fantasy football get into my personal life, except with Dr. Caitlin. She's probably sick of talking about fantasy football with me, but it doesn't really extend to my kids. My son he's almost 10 years old, and he is getting into fantasy football. This is his first year playing, but we haven't done our draft yet, and so I'm just waiting to plant that seed. It's sort of like sports or any other hobby or passion that you have, where you don't want to smother the kid with your passions. You want to let it sort of grow organically. And if it does, I very much want to do like not like a master and apprentice, but like a transference where my son and I do blend the real world and fantasy football, where we learn lessons, sort of like a martial art or playing a sport together, those types of things. You can learn discipline and you can apply base principles creatively. And like, I think that'll be a really interesting way to connect with my son. Cause like I said, he's almost 10. He's reaching the age where he's kind of sick of my shit sometimes now. Like, I'm not the coolest person in the world for him. And that's okay. But you have to find new avenues. And with like the father son, the masculine relationships or whatever, sports are so often that avenue to create intimacy between father and son. And so I am looking forward to that. Let's see. Let's get another one here. All right. So here's a question. Both the Bucks and the Lions have lost prominent offensive play callers. Yeah, so the scheme is changing, right? Both teams have very fantasy relevant skill positions as well. Can I compare and contrast my approach to assessing the risk for potential regression? And what do I do to insulate rosters accordingly? Now, this is like a granular, like honed in view that I honestly don't typically take until we see the earliest reveals. So what I like to do is the first 3 weeks, I dig in really, really deep to the data. I'm looking at snap shares. I'm looking at all the underlying metrics of what's going on in the NFL. And I think traditionally the sentiment is we don't get enough of a reveal until about 4 to 6 weeks into the season. And then we can use that as trend data. Before that 4 to 6 week period, we kind of default as a fantasy space, as an industry, to last year's data. I try not to do that. I think there are really, really strong takeaways from digging into the first few weeks. That's how we found Sam Laporta. That's how we found Rico Dowdle. Brian Thomas Jr. was somebody that we were sharpshooting, saying all he needed was a greater snap share. And he had wide receiver 1 potential. Malik Neighbors had wide receiver 1 overall potential. And so like, looking into this data week 1, 2, 3 is a chance to get up on that rocket ship, right? That incredible value and production gain. Cooper Kupp from a few years ago was a really good example. I think in 2021, where you should have bought in early. This is a lesson that I learned with Puka Nacua, where I don't want to get off the rocket ship. I was selling too low. 2 seconds, something like that, was getting me off of Puka Nacua. And that's just not the way to handle these early reveals. And so when we have situations like the Bucks and the Lions, where the landscape is different, right? The head coach is the same, but the offensive scheme is going to be different, whether that's drastically different or just nuanced. We're going to see. And I want to wait until they tell us what they want to do. And you can get a lot of those takeaways in the first few weeks of the season, and you can beat your league mates to market. You can beat, the experts to market because they're still using last year's data. So Kornblum says portfolio strategy for parenting does sound like my approach to have a similar life to Vince Vaughn's masterpiece Delivery Man. That's great. Well, strength and honor, Kornblum. I hope that your kids are off at school right now or daycare or somewhere else. And yeah, it's a lot. I have 5 brothers and sisters, and I can't imagine parenting that many people. that's wild to me. Let's see, what else do we have? So Clondano says some leagues have a yearly trade minimum. It doesn't bother me because he loves trading, for better or worse, but it does feel weird to force it. If you're in a league that can vote on bylaws, that's one option. I really like giving people the option to trade or not trade, right? Like, I don't want to force people to swap thirds and fourths back and forth just to meet some sort of like minimum threshold. Um, that said, like the easiest way to get people trading is to do a lot of those really low level trades. You don't want to go after somebody's 101 if they're reticent to trade, right? Like you want to sort of like coax them out of their shell and figure them out a little bit more, because if they're not trading, they're not giving you a lot of data points on what it is to be a successful trade partner with them. And so, yeah, try to turn them slowly into a volume trader. And maybe it's just not their thing. Like maybe they just don't want to do it. But I don't think trade minimums in the bylaws solve the problems that they think it will. I think it's probably either a league mate problem where you need to be in a more active league, or they need to be in a less active league if it's causing real friction. Let's see, Big Wojciechowski. Do I have any thoughts on Michael Penix? Is he a buy, sell, or hold? Let's look up what his ECR is right now, because it always comes back to cost, right? I'm in a startup right now. We should pull up some startup ADP as well and just sort of see where he was going. Let's see. Looking at Michael Penix in the Dynasty ranks, his expert consensus ranking is QB 20. So he is right behind Dak Prescott, right ahead of Cam Ward in Fantasy Pros ECR. I personally would prefer both Prescott and Cam Ward over Michael Penix. Penix and Ward are very similar, but I wouldn't trade the 101 for Penix. I wouldn't trade the 102 for Penix. And that tells me like there's probably a little bit more shine on Cam Ward right now. And so if you can trade him at this ECR, that makes a lot of sense to me. But when you get just below that, I mean, it's Tua Tagovailoa, Bryce Young, Justin Fields, Sam Darnold. It gets ugly really quickly. So it feels like Penix is sort of hanging on to this final tier of quarterbacks that we like or we could fall in love with. That's the tier that I really rely on John, the SFD, to help me navigate, because I'm just not in those ranks very often. I'd like to get right up to the top as quickly as possible. And so I'm not the wisest market person when it comes to Michael Penix types. So what I would probably do, I would probably try to sell him at his current price to get into one of these veteran players, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, the players just above him with small adders, or I might be inclined to liquidate. Like, can I move Penix into, I don't know, let's say a 3-week starter, somebody, even like an Aaron Rodgers. I know nobody likes Aaron Rodgers, but like an Aaron Rodgers and a 2027 first round pick, something like that is how I tend to move with these assets. That said, like I mentioned, I'm in a startup with John, and I'm trying to get to QBX instead of arms race, and it's not going so well. We only have 2 quarterbacks right now, and we're into, I think, the 8th round of this startup draft. And so it's about to get really, really ugly. We're going to be talking about Geno Smith, Anthony Richardson, Michael Penix is already gone, Justin Fields, like those types of assets, shorter term assets. And we may go all the way down to like Tyler Shuck. That may be our 5th quarterback to satisfy the SFD. I'm pretty happy with having just Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert right now. That said, like co-managing is, you got to blend philosophies for both managers to feel some sort of like buy-in or ownership of the team. And so I'm going to try really hard through these middle rounds to get those numbers up for the SFD. Let's see, what else do we have in here? Oh, let's talk about the Dynasty Data Lab ADP for Michael Penix. Let's see where he is going. He's again QB 20. Okay, so it seems like the market has sort of reached a consensus on him, somewhere in the middle of the end of the 5th round in a startup draft. So if you want to solidify the quarterback position, that's sort of your benchmark to get to 2 or 3 or whatever your number is of quarterbacks by the middle of the 5th round. Otherwise, you're going to be stretching just like I am to hit my numbers. Follow-up question here. It's on a rebuilder. Maybe trading Penix for Dak Plus could work if he can flip Dak later in the season. This is sort of like Kirk Cousins territory with Dak Prescott at this point, where it's probably going to be a perpetually underrated asset. And the quickest way to get out of a rebuild is to stabilize the quarterback position, in my opinion. And so moving from Penix into Dak, what are you losing? Like a decade? Like that's very significant. But Dak Prescott is, he's in his Kirk Cousins phase right now. And I kind of like being in on that if it's a QB 3 or 4. And in a rebuild, I wouldn't be afraid of age at the quarterback position unless you're, creeping up to that 40-year benchmark. But we don't really have quarterbacks that are doing that very often. So we'll see. Let's see. Let's go to the podcast thoughts and questions tab and see if there's anything in here that we want to address. Let's see. Go ahead and get those questions in too. If you have any thoughts, get them in the Discord, get them in the YouTube, or jump on the show with me. I do miss talking to the super friends. Right. Let's see. It does feel like Tyler Shuck is climbing in the ADP ranks a little bit, and I'm really happy about that. Like, we need to start respecting draft capital a little bit more at the quarterback position. I know second round quarterbacks bust all the time, but we've got both Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck with top 40-ish draft capital. Jackson Dart was drafted in the first round, and I've caught a lot of flack for putting him all the way up at like the 104, the 105. But I could see a very happy marriage moving forward in ADP in August where, those late drafters, the folks who wait until right before the season, where Jackson Dart is like the 107, the 106, something like that in the ADP, the late season rookie ADP, because he's going to do well. There are going to be clips through training camp that are going to spike up his value. We're going to remember, oh yeah, first round quarterbacks, they don't sit all year typically, no matter what people say. We're going to have a real quarterback competition on our hands. And he may not start at the beginning of the year. Like, that's totally fine. I mean, Justin Herbert didn't start at the beginning of the year. There's plenty of quarterbacks who are good that don't start at the beginning of the year. And, come week 6 or whatever, they're in the starting lineup, or after the bye week, they're in the starting lineup. And I think that we need to get out in front of that as a community, as a Superflex Super Show community, because there's going to be a lot of value gain. So another thing in the Discord, we were talking about how the Houston backfield is maybe a little bit more unsettled than we've given it credit for. Joe Mixon in a walking boot. So I don't know. I think that this is the type of situation where if you drafted Woody Marks in the 3rd or 4th round, you're feeling really good about yourself right now. But on the waiver wire is Dameon Pierce, someone that the Discord brought up. And I was thinking, I was near dropping Dameon Pierce just the other day. I'm so glad I didn't. This is a reminder that these aged backfields where you have the 27, 28, 29-year-old running back as the lead guy, we need to be investing more heavily this time of year. Because it's not because production is better behind an aged running back. It's that the market can't wait to sour on a Joe Mixon type. And once they do, you want to have the backups just for that sort of rubber banding effect, the elevation of the backup running back into some sort of inflated market price that you can then sell. And so I think that someone like a Dameon Pierce, if he goes out and does what he did in week 18, where he had like 170 yards, like we could see Dameon Pierce going for 2nd round picks in week 1 and being a surprise. What the hell happened? Why is this happening? What are we doing? We don't understand week 1 type situation that we see every single year. And then Jay brings up Travis Etienne, somebody that immediately post draft, I was wondering, what are the Jaguars going to do with this guy? Like, tepid enthusiasm at best. Real drop off in yards per carry. Was injured all last year, pretty much all last year. Tried to play through it to some degree. I thought he was going to get traded immediately post draft because the Jaguars were talking about acting swiftly to patch needs and to fix the roster and to give young guys opportunities. And they did just draft 2 running backs, Tootin and LaKen Allen. The path is not clear for them quite yet. And so I'm wondering, is this a trade candidate? I think the market as a whole is wondering, is Travis Etienne going to be in another home next year? Right now, for the cost of like a 210, 211, you can buy in and find out yourself. So we'll see. But yeah, definitely get into that Woody Marks. That's a really great call this time of year. Get into Dameon Pierce for free. All right. Jake was asked, he has another question here. I alluded to co-managing with John Hogue. Lapisaurus and Jake are running a new team together and at the tail end of a startup. Awesome. Awesome. I'm curious how that went for you. What should you do post startup to align? Weekly calls. What happens when strategies or simply values clash? Yeah, we were talking about this in one of the episodes that may never get released, John and I, because it's really interesting. Like, A, you want to learn from each other, and B, you want to coexist. Like, those to me are the primary goals. Unless you have a timeline associated with this, where it's like, hey, I'm going to help you manage your team for a year. I'm going to do what I do, you do what you do, and then I'm going to hand it over to you. And that's the end of our sort of arrangement, treating it almost like a co-managing empire. However, if you're going to be doing this together, we set out like fairly specific ground rules of what it is we ideally want from a team, the ways in which we're going to strategically play, and then we applied that to the startup draft. And how is it going? It's kind of a blend of the two. We're light on quarterbacks right now, but I'm going to make a very specific push to accommodating John's desires. And as we move through the draft, there's a lot of check-in points of like, okay, I'm considering these players. You tell me the 3 or 4 you're looking at. What is the Venn diagram in terms of selecting players? And as the roster build evolves, what are we looking at on the horizon? After the draft, we have defined roles again. So John said, get me the groceries and I'll make the dinner, the old Parcells quote, right? And so I'm going to be sort of the general manager, and he's going to be the head coach. He wants to be setting lineups. He wants to be navigating sort of the day-to-day. I think we're going to probably both do waivers, but a lot of it's going to be on him. The roster construction is going to be set, and I'm going to be managing the team as a whole, doing the trade offers, sort of doing the big picture alignment of the team. And yeah, are we going to check in? We do a podcast together, so it's a little bit easier than most folks. But I would recommend checking in. Not so much for the strategic moves, but B, to create a little bit more synergy between you two and to make sure that there isn't anything ill-fated happening where you have a conflict that, if there's 2 people in a room, like compromising isn't always easy. Sometimes you're just on different positions. And so having sort of a I'll give you one, you give me one mentality, or having more defined roles can really alleviate some of that friction. I was co-managing with another industry person, and it did not go well, to be honest with you. And so we both agreed to kick it into a rebuild, and I managed the team through a rebuild, and I gave it back to the other manager. It wasn't like we despised each other, we were fighting or something. It's just our vision didn't align. And, we were both doing a show together. And so it was sort of a natural thing of like, we should co-manage a team. Love the guy that I was co-managing with, but our visions just did not align. And so I did my best to set him up with a good team, traded for some quarterbacks, got his roster construction right. I think the team is in a better place than when I took it over, but I was very happy to no longer co-manage because I don't think that's for everybody. I don't think everybody should be a co-manager. It's kind of a tough dynamic, in my opinion. When I was asking John, like, hey, have you ever successfully done this? He's like, no, not really. And so maybe it's not a great dynamic unless you're in like really, really high stakes leagues and you need help with buy-ins, whatever that means to you. Or if you're newer and you want to work with a veteran player, or if you're trying to adapt a new part of your game. And that's what I'm really excited about, is just learning more intimately about how John fundamentally plays fantasy football, and also like teaching him some of my process. That way, when we're talking about something, it's a little bit more second nature and we can pull from each other's lived experiences. It's easy to talk about fantasy football. Actually executing on the strategy is an entirely different ballgame. So I hope that helped, Jake. And if you have any more follow-ups on that, we could certainly talk about that later today. Let's get 1 or 2 more if we can. Let's see what else is in here. Thoughts on Roschon Johnson as a cheap acquisition? The Podfather is apparently talking up Roschon Johnson. I really like Roschon Johnson. Not the player, not even the situation, just the profile. I think he was a 4th round pick, has not had any sort of spike yet. But this is the exact type of profile that I target, is running backs drafted in the 4th round. That's sort of like the magic cutoff line in terms of like potential success rate. And success rate, as I define it, is an ability to finish in the top 24 at some point in their career at the running back position. Roschon Johnson fits that bill. What I would encourage the Super Friends to think of is how many other 4th round picks are out there in the NFL. Dameon Pierce, I think, is one of them. He might have been a 5th. Might have been a 4th round pick. But those types of profiles are ones that you hunt out because the situations are very fluid around them very typically. And then when they spike, that's when we sell them, right? But right now, if you can get in on the way up with Roschon Johnson, I think he's a great buy. But there's probably 15 other running backs that look very similar to Roschon Johnson that I would personally be hunting out before him because they can be had essentially for free or literally for free. All right, let's see here. Cornbloom with another one. Need an analyst co-manager league with each show getting its own team and having it broadcasted to the public. I wish we had to show our trade offers. I wish that we had to show the moves that we make. Not even for like the accountability thing that some of these like Twitter folks try to do, the fantasy receipts type folks. I just think it would be really instructive to ourselves if we could like have an audience that was maybe less judgmental than the online space. Something like this Discord, right? Like showing all of your work to your Discord, because these are people that listen and trust and think similarly, or sometimes challenge the thinking, which is also awesome. But I think that giving sort of the homework component over before the test, I think that would be really cool. I think that would be interesting and helpful. I don't know if it would make me offer better deals or if it would make me send out fewer offers. I think it would certainly highlight the volume component of my trading, and the fact that I don't necessarily listen to feedback, which can be frustrating for, I would guess, my league mates and other folks, maybe a co-manager as well. I think it would highlight some of the biases that are pretty obvious that I don't tend to try to hide because I don't find people looking for them as much as I do. But if everything was out there to see, perhaps that would expose some of y'all's own biases and sort of find the similarities, and then we could overcome those together. So I think it'd be really cool to have a show and have 12 different co-managing podcasts simultaneously going on. I was listening to, before I jumped on, I was just starting Pete Davidson Rotobon's podcast where he's actually talking about the startup that I'm in. And he's mentioned me and John a few different times about what we're trying to accomplish and what he's trying to do. And so it's interesting to have in real time sort of the thoughts and feelings of another manager unfold as we're doing a startup. Let's see if we can get one more in before I get out of here. I appreciate y'all hanging with us. I know that consistency in terms of releasing podcasts is really important. It's late May. Life happens, you know. But we have content. It might just be stale at this point. Let's see here. Oh, I did want to get into this a little bit. Trying to teach league mates. Black Panther was talking about this in the Discord about how he was wasting time teaching league mates sort of the fundamental flaws in either their process or their trade offers or the things that they do that are unsuccessful in getting deals done. And I think that like that's a natural inclination for us as people. And when we're reaching out to people one-on-one as like a friendly arm around the shoulder type presence, I think that's one of the best parts of what makes us human. However, like I have had almost zero success trying to teach somebody how to improve the trade offers that they send to me or their league mates. And I found that the friction that it creates, the trade partner bridges that it burns, the perception of me as a league mate changes in a like souring way. And so I've stopped trying to do that. I've stopped trying to talk about trading almost completely. And I found a lot more um, success in terms of getting the quantity of deals done, the quality of deals as well. And I'm also like not stressed. I don't know if y'all feel this ever, but like when I send a trade offer, I get like a little skip in my chest. Like my heart skips a beat almost of like, here we go. I don't know about this. And when that's reinforced with negative feedback or a rude comment or a shitty counter offer, it makes me like internally have either doubt or feel bad about myself. Like this isn't like, oh, I'm no good at this type thing. But like I think if you get enough of those, enough of that feedback, it can change the way that you approach a league or you approach trade offers in general. And if you're already hesitant to send out offers, if you feel that flutter in your chest every time you send an offer and you're just getting like really shitty feedback over and over again, I would guess it's going to make it so that um, you can't approach trading in the same way, the same accessibility that other managers do. And so I would suggest just try in one league, not cutting off trading like Jake was, but cutting off communications about trading and just approach the league chat or the message board or whatever platform you use as a social platform. And like you can be kind, you can be generous, you can be engaging, you can talk about all sorts of stuff, football included. But try not talking about the trade offers or the trade rejections or any of the dynamics around trading for a little bit and see if that puts you mentally in a healthier place and see if you actually get more deals done or if deals are just they operate more smoothly, if rejections are cleaner, where there's not hard feelings on the other side or on your side. So let's close out with that. I really appreciate the questions today, y'all. It's good to talk to you again. And I hope you'll join us on the Dynasty Underdog podcast tonight. All right. See ya.